Okay, hello everybody. I think we're online now. Welcome to a webinar on the Industrial Growth Fund operated by the OWGP. I'm Tom Piper, Project Manager with OWGP, and today I've got Tim Pick and Clark McFarlane helping me on this webinar. Tim will, our board chair at OWGP, will introduce OWGP and the IGP. How we got where we are, and then Clark, our latest and newest board member at OWGP, will highlight the opportunity and the funding ecosystem and the importance of this call, and then they'll hand over to me and I'll talk you through the scope, eligibility, how to apply, and the mechanics of the call. So I'll hand over to Tim, and we'll start in earnest.
Good morning, everyone. Amazing to see 159 people on this webinar. Thank you very much for giving up your Friday mornings. That's excellent. So just a bit of background, and I'm conscious that I can already see some very familiar names on the list, and I suspect many of you know us already or are registered with us. But just to give you a potted history, OWGP was established as a result of the sector deal back in 2019. We're a private sector, not-for-profit organisation funded by developers, and that's organised through the Offshore Wind Industry Council, which Clark will cover in his remarks. We've been going since 2019. We run business transformation programs, so they're typically paid business support programs, like some of you will have participated in Sharing Growth or Fit for Offshore Renewables, perhaps. And there are other programs in there. And we also run funding programs historically targeted at innovation, development, and manufacturing facility support, more on the DevEx side. This new program is going a step further, more onto the CapEx side. As I said, we're private sector funded by developers. And so we are a bit more flexible than public sector organisations. We're not bound by the Green Book, and we're not subsidy controlled, which gives us a bit more flexibility in what we do with our cash. But obviously, we have to be responsible, given that it's fundamentally not ours. Tom, if we can move to the next slide. Just to give you a sense of the impact. So over the last 3-4 years, we've received around £30 million of funding from developers. And that supported 387 projects. We do gather statistics and information about our impact from those, and you can see those on the slide. But I think it's we're at a point now, I think, where we're well recognised within this ecosystem. And I would hope those 387 companies we've supported would have a positive view of the organisation. Tom, moving on to the next one. Those of you who have perhaps followed this over the last few years, a lot of work has gone in from various industry organisations, including the two Crown Estates, OWGP and Renewable UK, going back to the sort of 2022-2023 period. First of all, looking at the UK supply chain and where the UK has areas of comparative advantage or opportunities to disrupt global supply chains, and trying to sort of take a raw scientific view on where scarce support should be allocated. That resulted in the Offshore Wind Industrial Growth Plan, which was launched in the spring of last year, which identifies priority areas based on that analysis. That I hope that has been widely read. It's available on, I think, the Renewable UK and OWGP websites. It's not a heavy read. It's quite an interesting document to go through, and sets out a number of priority areas for the UK supply chain. Let's move on, Tom. So the IGP included this concept of an industrial growth plan delivery body to try and bring some level of coordination to this space. Back in December 2024, OWGP we were thrilled to be appointed as that delivery body. That was confirmed by Michael Shanks in his speech at the Spotlight Conference last December. And then since then, during the course of this year, we've been putting the plumbing in place to make that happen. So a new funding deal with developers, starting with AR7 and going forward, but also crucially, I think some collaborative arrangements with GB Energy, with Crown Estate, with Scottish Enterprise, Scottish Government, Welsh Government, to try and bring a bit of coordination, make things a bit easier to understand for the supply chain, and make sure we're sort of all driving in the same direction. So we have now been appointed as the delivery body. Our core responsibilities in this role are set out in the green bit in the middle of this slide. So we are owning this growth plan going forward, and obviously it's not a static document, and things change in an economy this size. So we'll iterate it, every few years to make sure it's current. We will champion the supply chain. I think we already do that, have been doing that for several years now, and we'll monitor progress. And I guess the key thing is we are now in the mode of distributing this new money coming through from developers, starting with AR7, and that's what's called the Industrial Growth Fund, which we're talking about today. So exciting times. That funding is quite a bit bigger than the historical funding we've had. It's plumbed into the government's clean industry bonus arrangements to some extent. And I think it's quite exciting for us as an organisation to be able to have an impact in the CapEx space, as well as continuing to do our support for innovation, development and DevEx. So with that, I think I'll hand over to Clark.
Thanks, Tim. And good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Much appreciated that. I'm delighted just to go through what's happening, where the funding's coming from, how does it work for us in the supply chain. Quite a great moment for us. As you know, I've been trying to develop us as a supply chain and get greater support and transparency and assistance and route to markets over the past 12 years. And I think this is a great vehicle and a good timing for us within the supply chain. So I'll just tell you how I think this fits with our plans and how it's different maybe from other aspects that you might be considering as you go forward looking for support. Now, one of the questions that somebody might ask you, particularly if an international company, why invest in the UK? What's this support any different in the UK? Why does it matter investing in the UK? Because there are plenty of other places in Europe that you could bring up. So I put on the slide in a very transparent way that within the EU, there are funding mechanisms that you could apply for from a number of different countries. I've just given you examples and dates as to where countries have launched their support programs. And wind farm components are in scope, but don't cover all of the components. So here's the differences. These are government-led systems. They don't promise you work on a project. They just help you support a facility. They are related to all components, and they're not specifically tied to any project or any developer or even promise of work in a route to market. They're simply a support mechanism. And where the industrial growth plan leading to the industrial growth fund comes is it's supported by developers, it's grants that you're able to use, and it comes with a route to market because it's the successful developers who are executing projects that are going to be part of the decision making and help for your support. So I think it's very different and a lot stronger than what we've been able to see the European countries offer to date. So I thought I'd put that as a context as to why I think it's important for us in the UK. Next slide, Tom. Now, it's not the only source of funding. And you know, during the summer, we put out a brochure trying to show different types of funding you could get. That might be debt, it might be equity, it might be grant, it might be technology R&D, or it might be deployment. And there are a number of different parties that are looking to support you. You've already got the Crown Estates Accelerator, you've got the OWGP as it exists today. And so where does this add to the system. Well, where this adds to it for me is that this is, as I said, grant funding. It's significant funding. It is funded by people who win projects. So the developers who fund it, they are looking for the facilities to build their projects. So they're looking for the components. It is about job creation. So we are looking for sustainable jobs within the UK. But also we've chosen an independent organisation, the OWGP, to help us with this delivery. Why? Because giving away money to the right places and getting the right investments and making sure they're timely and they're usable in projects, we need some people with some expertise. And thankfully, the OWGP as a team have been doing that since 2019. So I've got some trust in being part of coming up with how that was founded. I think having someone who's independent, who can help you with your application, and you know it's going to give you a fair hearing and wants to be on your side, I think there's a good balance of who's funding, who's using your products and facilities, and who's assessing and helping you get the grant funding. So I'm quite happy. Now, it may well be that the Industrial Growth Fund is not for you, and we can help you point you in the direction if we think it's not for you. So please don't be shy in asking us a question. Next slide. Now, the funding is coming from the Offshore Wind Industry Council. I've seen many of you there. I think you'll know who the Offshore Wind Industry Council is, but I thought I'd just explain a little bit of the funding. So the Offshore Wind Industry Council is the official joint government and industry body for offshore wind in the UK. It was founded back, I think the first meetings are back in 2012, end of 2012, beginning of 2013. I was there. We've had some ups and downs, but the good thing about this is that the funding comes from those who win projects. It's related to project wins. So whether it's through funding from those who win a project or through the CIB mechanism, it's people who are looking to build a project. And I recognize from a person in the supply chain, it's not just about getting grant. It's about making sure that you've got a route to market. It's about making sure that you can do an investment on more than one project, maybe multiple projects. It's about getting visibility of a pipeline. It's about having that sustainability so that when you invest, you can see how your facility, product, services are going to be delivered in future. And I think having this team on board and having them get a number of people who are executing projects into the same mechanism is good for us in supply chain. That's really a difference than we've had before. And also the applications, we will be able to confidentially look at it within the OWGP team just to make sure that it is something that's usable, that people are going to sign on to, so that our investment isn't wasted. Also on OWGP are the major OEMs, such as Siemens, Gamesa, Siemens Energy, such as Vestas. So it's not just the developers, it's people who you might be a tier 2 or tier 3 supplier through an OEM as well. So please don't think it's just the developers. We have access to a range of people within OWGP that we can tap into. Next slide, Tom. If I was you, I'd be saying, well, hold on a minute. I've got CIBs, I've got projects. Are the two linked? Well, I don't want to give away all the numbers, but certainly within the CIB applications, we can already see there is enough gigawatts of capacity to have within the auction. So I can see an appetite, I can see a potential for deployment, I can see the gigawatts out there. That should lead to a number of projects through the market, so what we could invest in. Well, clearly we haven't got 3 billion at the moment, but then an investment leads to before it becomes a multiple. And if I look at the OWGP members or their joint venture projects, there's over 40 gigawatts of projects in the pipeline for this going forward, not only from this round, but for future rounds. So I do think this is a sustainable mechanism that we've got going forward, linked to some real projects. Next slide, Tom. So finally, what's it about? Well, clearly, it's about supporting the UK economy I don't make any shame about it. This is where we're going to have the biggest auctions in Europe. This is where we've got I think, a pipeline and a policy, which is at least had some bumps in the road, but at least we've got a route forward. Whether it'll reach the ambitions of 2030, I don't know, but at least it's real projects, and at least it's real cash from support for us. Yes, we're trying to create jobs, and it needs to be linked into looking at jobs. We've got a number of technologies which we've examined, which we think we're strong at in the UK, and we help you focus on what we think is a sustainable investment, where we've got the skills, where we've got the abilities, and Tom will cover that later on. So we've tried to do a little bit of first sifting. I'm quite happy for that to be challenged, but the point of this is we're going to work together. We're going to work together as a team to try and build our offshore wind capabilities, and with an export mindset. It isn't just building in the projects, but hopefully we can use the support we've got. So hopefully you can see the appetite and the purpose, and how this is different from what we've done before. Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, Clark. Okay, I'll pick up here, and we'll start to look at the call itself, and ins and outs, the do's and don'ts, eligibility. I should just say I've got some other colleagues on the call who will pick up questions in the chat if they arise, and also we've got time at the end as well to pick up some questions where we can. Obviously, the more specific they are, we may need to take them offline and discuss them then. So let's get into the detail of the call. So the Industrial Growth Fund, supporting in the development and expansion of UK facilities for offshore wind. You can apply for a funding between 300,000 and 25 million per project. We'll come to the details of that on a future slide. And as it's already been said, this is designed to support capital investment. So first for OWGP, capital investment projects from UK-based organisations. We'll look at what that means in a minute. Looking to expand existing or build new supply chain facilities that align with the industrial growth plan. And again, that's all covered in the detail. Okay. Yes, we'll provide funding to support the development and expansion of commercial readiness of UK-based facilities that will supply key components, equipment, systems or services into the fixed and floating offshore wind. So you'll see that's a little bit broader than some of the support we've offered in the past. The programme is designed to support capital investment projects. Projects should align with the 2024 Industrial Growth Plan priorities as detailed in the IGP, and I will second what Tim said there about getting to know that document. It's very important. It's the North Star for our responsibilities as the IGP delivery body, and projects will need to be aligned with some of the priorities in there. We'll look at that on the next slide. In addition to those that align with the IGP, there is an element of funding within this pot that aligns with CIB criteria. Again, we'll look at what that means in 2 slides' time. So CIB eligible projects and non-CIB eligible projects can apply. We encourage inward investment into the UK, but there is a requirement that an entity that applies for the funding must be registered in the UK to do business, be that as a company or a joint venture or a special purpose vehicle. Okay, and I think the reasoning behind that is just obviously our responsibilities are to help support, expand the supply chain in the UK. So that should be sort of an obvious link there. Okay, a little look at the IGP alignment. We heard about that a moment ago. So program support projects that fit in with one of the make, nurture to make, or protect priority categories identified in the IGP. There's a serious bit of work in that document, but it does have suitable amount of detail within it to help you identify whether your company or product align with one of those priorities. Those 5 graphics there align with the make priorities. We will give prioritization to the make category, but that's not to say we won't be funding nurture to make and protect categories. And in the application itself, you will see that firstly we give quite a lot of detail in a drop-down menu as to making that initial link, and then we really encourage you to tell the narrative and the story behind your link to the IGP, to make it clear how you align with the overall strategy for the industry. Okay, on to the next slide. Clean industry bonus. So as we've said, some of the pot, not all of the pot, but some of the pot, and probably the larger percentage of the pot, is linked to the CIB, and this will be dictated by the outcome of AR7, but for the exact fund. Obviously, if you can align with the requirements of the clean industry bonus, you will have access to the full pot. So what does CIB alignment mean? It means that a CIB proposal must be for an investment in either ports and/or facilities or firms manufacturing, assembling, or installing the key components listed in section 5.6 of the framework. Again, in our application portal in the questions, we've created a drop-down list which then aligns to the detail that exists in the framework. I would urge you to read the CIB framework, which we'll find on the DESNZ website or the government website, for that extra level of detail to really figure out your alignment and again, tell that story in your application. Beyond manufacturing or offering one of the services as detailed in the framework, you also need to meet one of the 2 following criteria. The first is the investment in a shorter supply chains, commonly known in the industry as the deprived areas. You'll find that in section 10 of the framework, and again, there's a significant level of detail to help you identify the right government-approved tools to define if you are in a deprived area. The second is the investment in more sustainable means of production, science-based targets, as detailed in section 11 of the framework. For this, you need to be registered with the Science-Based Targets Initiative. And then we'll ask you to provide your number associated with that, and then you need to be committed to targets by the day that this call closes on the 12th of December. Okay, and I think probably the last point I just need to mention there, the slide, the funding link here is developers, generators can either deliver their own CIB commitments, or they can ask OWGP, acting as the IGP delivery body, to deliver their CIB commitments on their behalf. Okay, I'm just going to quick drink of water and then we'll get into eligibility. Okay, here are the sort of headline eligibility criteria for the call. So we've mentioned already, need to be a UK-based company with an intent to supply the offshore wind sector or an already existing track record in the sector. So you can be an existing supplier, you can come from an adjacent sector, you can be a new entrant to the sector, but have skills. So that's things like I don't know, automotive or nuclear or other expertise that you might have, you could bring to the industry. Again, in the application, tell that story. we offer, carefully engineered questions to try and bring out your history, your skills, your motivation. So make sure you use that opportunity. The facility or asset needs to be in the UK, and in some cases primarily used in the UK. Needs to align with one of the IGP priorities. We've discussed that. Funding requested should be in the stated threshold between 300,000 and 25 million. We will come to another slide in a moment, which just provides some extra detail around that. So we talk about applicant acknowledges that the funding is for a fixed percentage of their project, depending on the total project cost. Again, we'll look at an example of that on a different slide. All project proposals must cover the full project lifestyle through to commissioning. So this is slightly different from some of our previous offerings, where we've, it's been more about the development, the innovation, and the getting to a FID decision. In this case, it's the full project lifestyle and the delivery of a facility. Having said that, some early development and pre-FID work may be eligible as part of the project, but it needs to be part of that full life cycle proposal. And for the CIB compliant projects, the application must meet the criteria as outlined in the framework. So here's some examples of eligible projects, not exhaustive, but here's give you an indication of what may or may not fall within the call. So an onshore facility build out or expansion, capital expenditure, including production line design, layout and commissioning, equipment acquisition and installation, pre-construction feasibility design and planning, environmental and permitting processes, process digitalization, automation, optimization, and clean energy integration or energy efficiency upgrades. So hopefully from that little list there, you see that it's not necessarily just building a large facility on its own. There is that opportunity for improvements, as long as things aren't just BAU, as long as it's part of a project with a tangible outcome. There may be some projects where vessels are involved and where the primary use is in offshore wind and the normal operational base is in the UK. We can look at funding major marine operations, materials handling or similar equipment that is located on a vessel. Again, there's more detail of that within the scope. For the CIB minimum standard route, any other projects that satisfy the allocation framework for eligible investments. So there are a few specific cases out with the IGP alignment that fall within the CIB framework. There's a definitive list in the document. I think I was saying 5.6 a moment ago on a slide before. It is referenced in one of these slides. Again, take a close look at that. Okay, types of projects that won't be eligible for this call. We will be unable to support sort of research and development, which isn't related to manufacturing. This call doesn't cover skills and training programs. We can't cover projects that are mainly focused on process improvement without facility investment. We can't fund facilities out with the UK. We can't cover pure infrastructure expenditure unless it is directly linked to a facility, that sort of sits on it, above it, next to it. It needs to, any infrastructure expenditure needs to be key to the success of the facility. Projects that are already funded or underway, particularly for the IGP element of applications, it needs to be a new project. However, having said that, there are some exceptions under the AR7 CIB allocation framework, where projects that have started, I think it was March last year is the date, some costs may be eligible under the CIB route that have already taken place. Yes, so facilities that might serve multiple industries, that's fine, but not if you can't prove that there is demand for the offshore wind for whatever it is you make, produce, or offer. And finally, this call will not fund operational expenses. You know, it needs to be a CapEx project, a definite sort of ring-fence project. Okay. Next slide. So here's some of the details of the project. We can offer 3 types of funding. Firstly, direct funding. You take the money, prove you spend it in a responsible way, as you said you were going to, and offered evidence that you've spent that. Second option is you have an offer to repay that funding, so use it as described, but once your facility is up and running, profitable, and again, there is we can offer a template for what this might look like, but we're happy to talk around it. But we would encourage you to consider repaying the funding. Again, that just allows us to pass it on to future beneficiaries in future calls. And thirdly, we have this capacity reservation proposal. So you may wish to offer to we can buy or reserve some output from your facility, whatever it is, and then we would reserve the right to sell that on or use it for a not-for-profit basis in the future. Again, more description of those 3 in the document itself. We've covered the headline values of 300k through to 25 million. That comes with the sort of caveats on the percentages here. So for small and medium enterprises, we can fund up to 70% of a project, where the total project value is up to or equal to £700,000. So then I won't read this whole table, but just sort of work through an example. Up to 50% for projects with a total of a value of up to 4 million. So that means that if your total cost of your project to deliver in its entirety is 4 million, we can provide up to 2 million of that funding. And hopefully that makes sort of sense for the next couple of rows. Maximum that we can fund per project is 25 million. And then a point of note here, we envisage there will be future calls associated with future allocation rounds. So while it might be possible to apply for more than one set of funding across that time period, for the same project, we will limit the total amount of funding per recipient, including wider affiliates on a project, to 30 million over this 4-year period. That ensures the funding is spread fairly around the industry. Eligible expenditure, materials, equipment, labour, contracts and overheads are eligible expenditures, certainly under the IGP route. And there's a lot of due diligence that goes on as part of the application process and the contracting process. However, the CIB allocation framework has slightly different eligible expenditure, but as part of this application, we would encourage you to detail in the workbook template all costs, and then as part of that offer, we can figure out what's eligible and what isn't under our funding offer. For some of you who have applied in the past, you might have been used to a 2-stage process we've offered more recently. We're now using an online portal, and this we've moved to a one-stage application process for our calls now, thanks to this new portal, but we'll come to that in a minute. Okay, how do you find us? How do you find this opportunity? Starting on our website, there is a page dedicated under the grant funding to the Industrial Growth Fund. If you click on the apply button, it will take you to the landing page of our application portal, which is called Submittable. On that, you'll see some introduction to who we are at OWGP and any open call that we have at the moment. So at the moment, or today, because West closes today you will see West and the Industrial Growth Fund, and then click on Submit. At that point, you'll see another box where you need to create an account. That is nothing more than an email and a password, and then you will be taken to the eligibility form and the main application form. The eligibility form is asking you to recognise that you've agreed with the sort of terms and conditions and the scope and guidance, and that you meet those sort of headline criteria that we've already discussed in these slides. The good thing about the portal is it allows collaboration. So once you're up and running with an application, you can allocate sections within it to your colleagues. So, you know, your finance team, you can allocate them the finance questions and they can fill that in. So encourage you to use that functionality. There's notes and tips there. And also, I wouldn't be doing my duty if I don't highlight that there is a link, external link, so it takes you back to our website, although it's not a visible page, where you can download, or it will automatically download the Excel workbook, which is an integral part of the application. You then upload that into the appropriate section of the application. Hold on. Yes, so these, I don't know how it's coming across. I've got the shrunken screen because I'm in presenter mode, but yeah, as I said, we have eligibility checks. Following that, it's one long, large application form. It's broken into these following sections. As I've already said, tell the story, make the links to the wider industry, to your strategy, whatever it might be within these sections. Facts and figures, the applications that tend to score higher are you know, reference to both facts and figures across markets, across opportunities, across your finances. Again, as you know, really can't reiterate that enough. In some sections, you will be offered the opportunity to upload additional material. A couple that come to mind would be your team CVs and sort of any evidence of expressions of interest or future customers. And again, reiterate, take that opportunity. It's there for a reason. And then, yeah, it's really trying to draw out what your project is, what you're producing, who your customers might be, how well planned your project is, what's motivating it. Are you aware of the full opportunity, the market, your awareness of the market, how, if you made any traction, the leadership experience, you know, how show us why you're a great company, why you're experienced, why you can deliver this. And then there at the end, we talk about the impact and additionality that's around really calling out why this funding would make a difference. And against the KPIs that were measured, the jobs created, exports, the IP, and the increased revenue, you know, what difference does this funding? We're looking to fund, you know, step changes here, rather than just sort of BAU. Okay, A quick look at timelines. The call is open. We're obviously on the second line. We're having the webinar today. Application deadline is Friday, the 12th of December. Following that, we hit the Christmas period, but we'll start some initial checks confirming that applications are eligible, and then we'll move into the full assessment piece. And there may be interviews and requests for clarification during that period. During that, we'll engage our strategy board and a reference group for their input and opinions on applications. And then, you know, any sort of joint and cross-funding opportunities that might be present. There will then be a board meeting late March, early April, where our OWGP board, acting as the IGP delivery body, will make final award decisions. In slight difference from before that, at that point, those awards were sort of directly into contracting, but we envisage, particularly for the larger grants, that there'll be a sort of extended period of due diligence at that point, and you know, contracting periods will vary, particularly for the larger funding on offer. Project start dates we have had a nod to already, but again, for the IGP related projects, 2026 start date and onwards. But as I say, take a close look at AR7 CIB allocation framework, and if you're confident that you obviously meet the criteria for that part of the pot, then there may be some retrospective costs that can be included in your project. Okay, on the left, I won't go line by line, but it's a weighting of what we're looking at and the importance of parts of your application. So, you know, take a look at that. Obviously, if there's a slightly higher weighting, then make sure you're, as I've said, telling that story, making those links, including the right facts and figures. Then your application will be assessed by both the OWGP team, and we use quite a portfolio of independent assessors. We make sure each application is assessed at least 3 times, and then you know, statistically checked so that we have a fair outcome in that ranking. There will be sort of elements of company checks and due diligence during that time. We're supported by our reference group, who are OWGP members, who will sort of advise on the usability of you know, the output of a facility, and then our strategy board, where that's other stakeholders, who, in particular, the sort of funders and other funders and government bodies, who will, you know, look to see where we can work jointly. And as I've said, final decision is with the board. And you know, at that initial board meeting, there is the opportunity to, you know, they may want further information and what have you. And then finally, some do's and don'ts. It just makes everybody's life easier. Please ensure that you're eligible before submitting an application. We have seen in the past on some other calls that some people might just put in a speculative application, but I think we will have an initial sift where we try to ensure that any non-eligible projects aren't taken forward. Please make sure your project costs are within the grant range. You know, if the funding request is not within the range, the proposal might be rejected, and also note those percentages. So there will be elements in the application where you'll state, you know, what you're putting in, where your other funding is coming from, and what your ask is. So that percentage for the ask from OWG, and that percentage will be calculated. Please make sure that all your project finances are correct and balanced across budget lines. because part of the application is within that Excel workbook. I think occasionally you see people break links or forget to create their own calculations and totals. So just double check all that before and check you're happy with those numbers. As discussed, let us know if you're willing to repay or offer a capacity reservation. And then any options that might be there. It's not essential, but we do encourage you to consider it. Make it clear that if there are going to be any changes during the project life cycle, and whether there's going to be new company names, a rebranding, it's a new dedicated company at some point in that period of funding. The more of that information we upfront, the better. I've already nodded to it, but again, pay close attention to the KPI alignment. That comes towards the end of the application. It's a very important consideration for us that the project does create UK jobs, more revenue, UK IP, or export opportunities. So do highlight that. It really is a key part of the assessment. And demonstrate a clear market understanding. Applicants need to demonstrate where they fit in the offshore wind market and how this can be exploited for company growth. And I've already said quantify where possible. Facts and figures are key. And finally, if you don't submit an application if you don't meet the eligibility criteria. I think we've already touched that. Don't submit an application for business as usual. Doesn't need to be a discrete project with obvious and tangible outputs. Don't be tempted to round up costs. Keep them as realistic as you can, because these will protract as we go through and scrutinise and elements of your application, are entered into the contract and the agreement, and it's important they're right from the beginning. Otherwise, we'll end up in well, at best, endless change processes, and at worse, a sort of breach of contract. Submit costs with providing clear justifications of the breakdown and how this demonstrates value for money. So again, we give you the opportunity to, again, towards the end of the form, use that opportunity, explain why this funding makes the difference, and or why the industry needs what it is you're going to be producing or offering. I've mentioned already, additional material only where requested, so don't add any extras. Please include overseas partners or subcontractors in your application, or don't include them, because we're trying to, start that point again, yes. Don't include overseas partners and subcontractors in your application list. You've notified OWGP and provided clear justification of why you're not using UK suppliers. Again, that comes back to we're trying to generate more work in the UK here, and so there needs to be sort of special circumstances if you're going to break that exception, that rule. And finally, don't inflate KPIs. Provide justification of your forecast numbers and how they align with the opportunity you're describing above, the project you're describing in your application. Great to be ambitious, but we prefer realistic numbers with a clear rationale. Okay, at the moment I'm going to have another sip of water, and I do have a couple of high-level FAQs we can look at, or guys, I don't know how we're doing for questions in the chat itself. I can hear lots of pinging in my ears. Next time I do one of these, I need to figure out how to silence that. It's distracting. The FAQs we have here, in the absence of any other questions, how do we know we're aligned with the IGP priorities? Short and simple answer is it's all there detailed in the IGP document. You'll find links in our scope and guidance to it, and as I said earlier, you'll find it on the Renewables UK and possibly OWGP website. As a port operator, am I eligible funding through the IGF? Yes, you can be, as long as there's a direct link. So it's detailed in section 5 of the Clean Industry Bonus Allocation Framework. So it's ports of facilities or firms manufacturing, assembling, or installing key components. So we did cover that in the main body of the presentation. But yes, full details within the Clean Industry Bonus Allocation Framework. How is funding through the IGF linked to the allocation rounds? Again, that is the CIB framework. It allows generators to nominate OWGP, acting as the Industrial Growth Plan delivery body, to allocate and invest amount on their behalf to meet their commitments. And therefore, the outcome of AR7 applications will have a direct influence on the number of projects that can be supported through this particular funding call. This CIB versus non-CIB piece, again, hopefully I've talked to that to a certain amount, but CIB has some very specific criterion. Take a look. We've already mentioned them in this presentation, and they're in the scope and guidance, plus the application process allows you to sort of draw out that detail to CIB alignment. If you don't align with CIB, don't worry, as long as you do align with IGF, the IGP, the Industrial Growth Plan, and you can prove a link back to the make, nurture to make, or protect categories. I won't do the next one. We've talked about that a couple of times. How do you know if you're CBI compliant? Take a look at the framework being the short answer. Do you have to pay back your funding? No, as mentioned previously, you don't have to pay it back, but you are given the opportunity to, which we would encourage. This allows us to support other companies in the future. And then there's this piece of this new offer of capacity reservation as well. So that's of interest. Do reach out. There are further sort of FAQs on our website, I think. We may well have a few more after today. And then I don't know how we're doing otherwise. Rob or Alex, have we got any questions, pressing questions that need answered now, or are you?
I think what we will try and do, Tom, is capture what we've got in the chat, share what we've got in the chat. If we were able to do that, I'm sure we can, but we'll try and do that. We've tried to answer as many as we can. We recognise we haven't answered all of them, but we'll pick those off and come back with any unanswered questions that we can answer. So I think we're reasonably good. It's just whether there's any big questions to be asked, please pop them in the chat.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. Then I think we'll maybe just keep the chat open for another minute or two to people to put questions in. We'll share where we can, either directly in the mailing list from this meeting, or uploading where appropriate, sort of adding to our FAQs already on the website. But we'll let know where we do that. Yeah. Otherwise, I'll draw a line on it there. I think we'll just give a few more. Yes, we make the slides available. I just saw that one pop up. We can do that. Okay, thank you everybody for attending. Yeah, please do add questions in, and as Rob says there, we'll provide answers over the coming days. I think
Tom, can I come in?
Yes, of course.
I saw there's a few questions on, is this the only source of funding, and what happens if we don't have enough funding, and can we apply to other sorts of funding? And I do recognise it's a complex set of funding that people are. But the answer to your question is yes. This doesn't have to be the only source of funding. If that we can help you go to another body, if it's a larger amount of funding you need, so that we can work with other people, such as the slide I showed earlier, or if I said to you that we don't think this is the most appropriate, or that you should be looking into one of our other vehicles or a vehicle from another government or UK organisation, we will help you with that. I'd rather you put your hand up and told us where you were as part of the application than make an assumption that either you're going to be short of funding or that you're lost and you don't know where to go.
Thanks, Clark. And on that point, there's and I think I already mentioned earlier, our funding is counting as private funding or industry funding, and in fact complements a lot of the what might be public funding out there or other funding bodies who class as public body funding. So yeah, no, we see some good synergies for comprehensive and complete funding applications out there. Tim.
Tom, I think it's been a good discussion. The discussion in the chat has been super interesting. There have been a number of questions on the size of the fund. We haven't given a total size of the fund because it's dependent on projects coming through. So the more successful AR7 is, the higher amount of money we will have to give away through this process. And obviously, this is not a one-off, so we expect to run exactly the same process for AR8, AR9, etc. So clearly, people won't want to miss out this time because it causes a year delay. But it's not a one-and-done opportunity.
Perfect. And then I saw a question there just very quickly pop up about discussion around the eligibility of projects. Again, I'd encourage you to just, consider what you've heard today and dive back into our scope and guidance. But certainly, if you still have remaining questions at that point, please feel free to reach out to the team. And we'll obviously engage you on a one-to-one basis, because there will be presumably some very specific circumstances that you wish to discuss. Okay. I think we're done there. So again, thank you everybody for joining. We'll do our best to address all the questions over the coming day or two. And beyond that, reach out if you have any very specific questions. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good weekend.